We have entered the second quarter of the year and a lot of good games have already been released. I wanted to take a look at the first quarter of this year and the best indie games that have been released so far. And I'll go off what I think of the games as well as the review score on Steam. The games aren't in any particular order for this list. Let's get started. We have to start with the biggest game that got released this year, at least when it comes to play count, Palworld. Oh boy, could anyone predict how big this game was gonna be? I had predicted that the game was gonna do well and be a hit, but not like this. It hit an all-time player count of 2.1 million on Steam. That's the second highest ever, beating out Counter-Strike with 1.8, but still a million off from PUBG, which reached 3.2 million. The crazy thing is that Palworld also have a positive rating of 93% on Steam, with over 250,000 reviews. That's just bonkers. Sure, that's impressive and all, and the game still has over 100,000 active players. But what I find really cool about this game is that they have created something that we as players wanted, and the focus solely lied on having fun. It's undeniable that the game is inspired by Pokemon, and you can talk about the implications and if the pals are too similar, but that's not something that interests me. I have played a lot of Pokemon games, and it was so refreshing to get a Pokemon game for grown-ups, because this is what Palworld basically is. And it's basically a Pokemon game that does something new, it pushes boundaries. Pokemon themselves haven't pushed boundaries in forever, and sure they are focused on a younger audience, so they can't really do what Palworld did, but I think Pokemon have lacked innovation for years. And I mean, why would they innovate? They make so much money on it. And that's also a reason why Palworld exploded. Sure, it's still a very limited game, and it lacks content. For me, it started to get repetitive after 10 hours, then it was the same type of content, only harder. The game is in early access, so I'm expecting the game to be refined and get a lot more content in the future. There is so much potential here, and even if you don't manage to add content that interests me, I played the game for 30 hours and I'm happy with what I got out of it. Then we have Blaze Blue Entropy Effect, one of the best roguelite games ever, in my opinion. In my top 15 best roguelite games, I have it in 10th place. The game spent the better part of 2023 in early access and had its full release in January this year. I haven't played the fighting game Entropy Effect is based on, and now that the game is completely separate from the fighting game, lore-wise, and a lot of fans of the fighting game doesn't really like what they have done in this game. For me, this game is refreshing. It leans towards a combo-centric playstyle where you build upon your moves and upgrade them. Then you also have an interesting system where you can use previous runs in a new run, granting you skills from different characters from the previous run to the new one. The characters themselves are very unique and plays very differently from one another. They have done an amazing job with the characters, and I think taking them from a fighting game really helped with this. The game is just a really well put together package. On Steam it has a rating of 93% with almost 16,000 reviews. Not a bad one. The game that came out of left field and captured everyone's interest is of course Balatro. I just recently bought this and have only spent an hour or so in it. I play so many different indie games since I started this channel, and on the side I'm trying to play through Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Dragon's Dogma 2, so I have a hard time fitting this game in. Well, I'm getting to it. I just probably won't do a review on it. I have, however, looked into Balatro quite a lot and find the game very interesting. And the little time I've already spent in it, it already has its hooks in me because it has all the addictive elements that just captures me and holds me. It's gonna swallow me up when I give it some time. So Balatro, what is it? If you haven't played it, it's basically poker, but then also not at all. You are trying to beat the blinds, and you do this by playing poker hands in order to score points. Then you also have jokers that modify the game. You can buy cards, upgrade cards. There is a lot to this game, and I just love everything about it. The channel Game Maker's Toolkit had a great video about this game and its design, because the design problem this game has is it's kind of an interesting one and kind of a philosophical one, so I highly recommend that video. On Steam the game has a 97% positive rating with 26,000 reviews. Pretty nuts. Last Epoch is an interesting title. It's been in early access since 2019 and it got its release 21st of February this year. I saw this game and bought it in 2021 and have followed it since and played it in different stages. The developers have done a great job developing the game and involving the community in the development. The game's release, however, was catastrophic, which is a shame. The game managed to peak around 264,000 players, but that meant it was unplayable for a long time, I mean several days, at least at the peak hours. The developers did a great job with updating the community during the launch, with the problems, what they were working on and the solutions. 11th Hour Games, that developed the game, is a smaller studio, and they couldn't really handle the game blowing up in popularity and play count, and that meant a rough landing on release. They did however not give up, and the game is working. Sure, that has a lot to do with the game being less popular now, but I think the amazing thing here is that they released an ARPG that landed perfectly between the big giants. It's less complex than Path of Exile, but more complex than Diablo 4, and generally better in every way as well. I love that it found a good space between these two, and it's well deserved. This is a good game. The balance here of an easy ARPG to get into, but still being complex enough for you to want to keep playing deep into the end game is here. It sits at a 77 positive review rate on Steam at the moment, with 82,000 reviews, which is still amazing after the catastrophic launch of the game. Enter Magnolia Bloom of the Mist. This one got released 2 weeks back. I just bought it, so I haven't played much of it yet. I'm very impressed by the game though. A few of the backdrops are just amazing. The combat is good as well, easy so far but feels a lot better than the first game. This is a Metroidvania set in a dark fantasy world, where you have companions that do the attacking for you. It's a really neat system. You're still limited to 4 attacks, but every companion have several to unlock, so there is some mixing and matching. I think the game is beautiful, and the soundtrack is smooth and suits the game very well. And I like everything in the game so far. It's in early access and aims for 6 months in early access. I don't think I want to play it too much in early access, as I'm more interested in the final product. On Steam, it sits at a 98% positive rating with 2,500 reviews. Pretty insane. Then we have Sons of the Forest. This one I haven't played at all. I'm not much for survival crafting games, but there is no denying how popular and well received this game has been. I looked at my Steam friends list and yeah, a lot of people have this game. This is of course the sequel to The Forest. The Forest sits at a 95% positive reviews with over 450,000 reviews. That's so crazy. And Sons of the Forest unfortunately doesn't really come close to this, with an 86% positive rating with about 170,000 reviews, but that's still amazing. Here in the sequel, you are sent to a remote island to find a missing billionaire. This is not an easy task, as the island is overrun with cannibals. The game is an open world and lets you decide what you want to do. There is of course a story to figure out, but you also have to craft, build and survive. Can be played with friends as well. I think the game looks great. I think the setting and premise is great as well. It's kind of refreshing that it isn't straight up zombies you fight, rather cannibals and weird mutations. Like that very much. Backpack Battles. This game to me is a really creative one. I have done a review of a similar game called God of Weapons, where you also manage your inventory, but that game is mainly a roguelite game. Backpack Battles is straight up a dueling game, where you buy items, optimize your inventory, and then have an auto battle against an opponent. And if you win, you continue the process. There is a ton of items in the game to play around with, and I've seen insane builds in videos on YouTube. People are insanely creative in this game when building their inventory to maximize their character. This one is in early access, but will have its full release this year. Personally, the only downside for this game for me is the graphics. Looks like an early 2000s browser game. It's of course not a showstopper. Graphics will never stop me from playing a game that has amazing gameplay. The game have done great for itself. It has a 92% positive rating on Steam with over 7,000 reviews. Very impressive. I just find it so amazing that they have managed to create a compelling game of what many would think is the worst part of other games, managing the inventory. It's pretty cool. The games I've listed so far, I think most people have seen or heard about. I have 2 more games that I think deserves to be mentioned, kind of hidden gems. The first one is Portal Revolution. I just find it so cool that a mod for a 13-year-old game is this good and got this much praise. First off, it's a mod, so it's free to play. You only have to own the base game of Portal 2. The mod is a full campaign that will last you for 5 to 10 hours, I think, with a completely new story and characters. There are 40 new puzzles, a very impressive package that offers more Portal for no additional cost. It has a 95% positive rating on Steam with 16,000 reviews. And then we also have Sheepy, a short adventure. This game is also free. As the title alludes, it's a shorter game. I think it takes you an hour or so. I'm assuming the developer will make a fully fledged game in the future, but I'm not sure. This is a really cute little 2D platformer with some beautiful pixel graphics. Reminds me a bit of Limbo, but not as dark and disturbing. I love when developers are doing a free demo or a portion of the game free so that you can get a taste of the game, not just see a video of it. This, however, is just a straight up free experience, which is kind of amazing. It has a Steam rating of 98% over 6,500 reviews. Very cool. These to me are the best indie games that have been released so far this year. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.